Shalom Avracha, good morning, White Show members, Mispalim, good morning, Klal Yisrael. Do I have a gem to share with you this morning? A gorgeous, a delicious Nesiras of Yaakov Elisa. And the Nachlas Yaakov, I saw this vart over Shabbos Kodesh. Mosek Midvash. So listen, my dear Klal Yisrael. Mamash Mardik, we said last week, a Gemaldige Meshach Chochma, we're in Ramea Simcha from Devinsk, writes in his Meshach Chochma Parshas Emor, that here we have on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Trua, the Iker Mitzvah Hayom, and we know that our Zechroinus, everything is only Ma'ala La'elu La'ela Hayadeu B'meh B'Shofar, state in the Gemara Rosh Hashanah Tzayim and Aleph. That is the Iker Mitzvah Hayom, the whole Inyan of the Shofar. And yet to what? Kizera Derabba, Rosh Hashanah Chavtesam and Beis, Shem we read that Joe Goldstein is going to go ahead and carry a shofar. He's an Eino Boki. He's going to go learn how to do it, and he might carry in Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. Frank the Mesiras Chochma, because of 1 year that might be Mechal Shabbos and willing to forgo to be Mavater the Iker Mitzvah Hayom. This is what we need. This is the schus that Klal Yisrael needs to tap into. And the Taikef Hayom of Rosh Hashanah. Hello, we explained Ramea Simcha from Devinsk writes that we show HaKadosh Baruch Hu that more than we care about our Yeshua, about our Hatzalah, about being Nitzel B'din. You know what's foremost in our minds? Hashem Yisbarach Shabbos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Vayanach B'yom HaShvi. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyach rest on day number 7, and then we too want to rest on day number 7, because Hashem matters more than our own Hatzalah B'din. Hashem matters more than our Rosh Hashanah, than our Shofar, than our Yom Teruah. You know what's of paramount importance? What's in the forefront of my mind, of your mind, of Klal Yisrael's minds? Hashem Yisbarach Riboy Kol Shamayim. We don't want to take the slightest chance in the world that anyone Chalila V'chas is going to be Machal Shabbos and thereby destroying and defiling the sanctity, the inherent Kedusha Sayom of what Shabbos Kodesh is all about. We'd rather go ahead and preserve the inherent sanctity of a Shabbos Kodesh. And that schus itself is going to serve us and propel us to a Hatzalah B'din. The fact that we were willing to give up the Shofar of Rosh Hashanah to do for the Eibishter, that act of sacrifice, that act of giving up, that means more to us, and that ultimately will go ahead and help us on Rosh Hashanah. So we mentioned in the past the famous Kedushas Levi, the Baditchavar, Parshas Bo and Kedushas Levi, the Vart of the Gra bought by his brother's grandson, the Torah Savas, or Tzaddik Cohen in a number of places. We refer to the end of a Pesach as Chag HaPesach. We talk about what the Eibishter did for us. Hashem says, no, Chag HaMatzos, look what Klal Yisrael did for me. I gave them a tzivah, I told them to leave Mitzrayim, and they didn't wait for a second. Chag HaMatzos, they didn't wait for the bread to rise. From the Eibishter's perspective, Kaviyachol, it's not about what he did for us, it's about what Klal Yisrael did for him. We're always turning the spotlight on one another. That's the beauty of our yachas, of our miyuchadik relationship between Klal Yisrael and Hashem, between the Kala and the Chassan. Kala focuses on the Chassan, Chassan always focuses on the Kala. That is a beautiful marriage, that's a beautiful relationship between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'bechinas the Chassan Kala. Givaldi. Now let me turn your attention to a beautiful, sweet Sheba Sweet, vart by Rav Yaakov Elisa, the Bala Nesiras, and the Nachlas Yaakov, the beginning of Parshas Vayakil. And of course, this connects to where we're holding now, Parshas Vayikra. It's all about the Karbonos. It all revolves on the hinge of the Karbonos, the sacrifices that we bring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his bias and his Dira B'Tachtainim and the Mishkan and the subsequent Batei Mikdash. Frank the Alshach HaKadosh, and the Nesiras cites the Alshach. Al-Shech wants to know, Lama Malachas HaMishkan Losidcha Shabbos Kemober Kabonis. We know the Smichas HaParshios, the Lamates Malachas, the 39 acts of creative work and activity that were involved in the Asiyas and the B'niyas HaMishkan, from the juxtaposition of the Malachas HaMishkan to Kedusha Shabbos. From that Chazal deduce that Shabbos, the B'niyas HaMishkan, the Asiyas HaKelim is not going to be Doicha Kedusha Shabbos. And yet, the Kabonis Ataka Doicha Kedusha Shabbos. When it comes to the Karbonos, we know that we still bring the Talmud Shachar, Talmud Shabbat Amayim. We have Karbonos that are Mesha Shaichi, that are germane to Kedusha Shabbos itself. So we go into a Mishkan, we go into a Beis HaMikdash, Our makriv karbonis frekti alshich. If our act of hakrobas karbonis is takadoich Shabbos, that means that Hashem says what you're doing is doich Shabbos. So why isn't the asiyas and b'niyas hakelim and the klei shoris, the klei mikdash, and the very etzem asiyas hamishkan in the botei mikdash? Why is that not doich Shabbos? As I frekti alshich hakadosh comes the Nefesh and he says, "I'll give you the teretz." Zok the Nefesh. We know that when it came to the klei shoris, the klei mikdash, nobody knows how to build a mishkan. These were slaves in Eretz Mitzrayim for 210 years. They weren't the master craftsmen and engineers. How in the world are they going to know how to go in and build a mishkan? Zok in the Nefesh, you can see it in the new Nachas Yaakov Machon Yerushalayim, came out a number of years ago, the beginning, first shtickle Parshas Vayakhel. Zok in the Nefesh, why do we find the Lashonas of everything being te'aseh, nasa me'aleh, kol me'ela b'maaseh Hashem? Rashi brings it, and Shema Yisrael, Teslam, and Gimel. The menorah, we know, throw it into the fire, it's going to come out as a menorah. The Aron, at the end of the day, yes, Betzalel, they were involved and they had the Chochmah Bina and the Tzvuna, but at the end of the day, they weren't the master craftsmen, they weren't expert engineers, they didn't have PhDs, they didn't know what they were doing. In the end, they were Chochmah slave, like Achai Sholomovitz points out. They didn't have the requisite Chochmah. But if you had the Chukka slave, if you wanted it in your heart of hearts, and they was to reciprocate it accordingly, and Hashem gave you the Chochmah. So in the end of the day, how did the Kalim come into existence? They came into existence on their own. They were Nasas Me'aleha. B'derech Klal, we were involved in the process, and we played a role in the process, but in the end of the day, when all is said and done, it was Hashem who in essence really formed and created the Klei Shoris, the Klei HaMikdash. So writes the Nefesh of Yaakov Elisa, Hashem says, when it comes to the Kalim that I was involved in producing, that I played a pivotal role in fashioning, that's not going to be Doich HaMai Shabbos. But you know what is Doich HaMai Shabbos? That which my beloved Klal Yisrael, that which my Kala, that which my Bnei Yisrael, that which they do, the Karbonis, that they go out and get the animal and they shecht it and they sacrifice it and have the Zrikas Adam and all the Malachas Avodas HaKarbonis, the Karbonis that Klal Yisrael, that they sacrifice, that they do, that is so beloved in my eyes. Zok the Nefesh, Hashem says that's Doich HaMai Shabbos. I, Hashem, rested on day number 7. The Fianias Daiti, this Nefesh is gorgeous, Sheba gorgeous. Why? Because the same way that we say that Hashem Shabbos is so precious to us that we're not going to do the mitzvah sayom of blowing the shofar, a gezerah derabbanan, gezerah derabba, Rashon Chavtes and Bei Shema Yavireno. We don't want to spoil the inherent beauty and the sanctity that's infused into a Shabbos Kodesh. So we're going to give up our mitzvah sayom of Rosh Hashanah, Tkiyah Shofar, to preserve the sanctity of Shabbos. And Hashem reciprocates in kind. It's Gavaldik, Chag Pesach, Chag Matzos. Hashem says, I'm willing to forgo my Shabbos. Not for the Kalim, not for the Mishkan that you needed me to build with you, not for the Klei Shoris that Hashem in essence formed the Menorah, formed the Shulchan, formed the Aron. He Kaviyachol, he made it happen. But the Karbonis that Klal Yisrael does, Hashem says, that is number one to me. You know what's foremost in the Eibishter's mind? Kaviyachol. Hashem says the karbonos, the sacrifices that Klal Yisrael brings, and that is going to be Doich HaMai Shabbos. That's going to override my Shabbos. So now put into the context of the Grove of Tzaddik of the Barditcher, it's Geshmak. We give up our mitzvah Rosh Hashanah to preserve Hashem Shabbos. And what does Hashem do? Hashem says, I'm willing to give up my Shabbos to let Klal Yisrael's karbonos override my Shabbos Kodesh. Givaldik, that's the Nefesh. Amardik, Adkan, Lefianias Daiti, we can be most of as follows. So why is the lesson our kabbanos? The Fianias Daiti, you know what's going to be Doich Hashem Shabbos, and not the Asiyas B'niyas HaKelim. In the end of the day, we didn't have to schwitz for it. What do we have to do? Take some gold, throw it into the fire, Givaldik, a miracle, and it pops out as a menorah. And even other things, Betzalel, fashioning an Aron, yes, it's using Kabbalah, Yadei Haya Betzalel, Latzarik Ben Esaosia, Sheba Nivru Shemayim and Oretz, Brochason and Hayam and Aleph. So we had Kabbalah involved, but Lamaisa, making the Kalim, we chiseled away at some gold. We didn't schwitz. We didn't get down dirty in the mud. We didn't get filthy. You know what matters the most? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Fianias Daiti, based on the Nefesh. You know what's Doich Shabbos? When we get dirty, when Hashem says you're willing to get yourselves dirty, you're willing to sacrifice, you're willing to get blood all over you, you're willing to get smelly with the kabbanas and to get dirty and to schwitz and to take an animal and have the blood squirt all over the place. if you're willing to get dirty and you're willing to go ahead and soil yourselves, if you're willing to do that, the avodas hakabonos that mandates, that requires the schwitzing, the going out, picking up the animal and holding it down and getting somebody else. They didn't have the fancy schlachthouses that we have today. Going and doing that, and you're willing to get dirty and down in the mud and down in the blood for a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Yes, we give the Eibishter like Churchill's famous blood, sweat, and guts. Hashem says, you're willing to give me all of you. That's going to be Daichav Shabbos. It's not stam making Caleb, Safianis, Daiti, piggybacking on the Nesiras. It's not stam because Hashem was involved in it. Hashem, but what about the Chelek that we talked to do? Even the Chelek we didn't have to get in the mud. We didn't have to get bloodied. We didn't have to get down, dirty, v'chule. You're willing to soil yourself for the sake of the Riboy Kvod Shamayim. Hashem says that matters to me even more than a Shabbos. I have to tell you, years ago I was learning Shchita. When I was in Kolel, many years ago in the Mir Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, Sabein Astorim, 1 year I was learning Hilchos Shchita. And obviously to go ahead and get a certificate or two now that you can go and shecht. Not that I'm so interested in shechting, but you want to know everything. So you have to learn shechita. So we had to practice by shechting little chickens on one of the younger man's, one of the Avrech's porches. His wife was in America for 2 weeks. I don't know what happened when she came back. That's not my problem. That was his problem. But we had a few young light in the small chabura learning Hilchos Shchita, and we had to practice on small chickens. Came the day of the big Bechina. We were going out to Beit Shemesh, to a Schlachthaus. We go to Beit Shemesh, and my wife says, Eitan, you're going to Shech. They had to pass the Bechina. You had to Shech 3 chickens in a row, flawlessly do a good Shechita, and then you're good to go. So we're going out, it's a Friday, a morning, and my wife says, Eitan, do me a favor, take an apron. I said, Aviva, take an apron. I said, the 4 other younger light in the Chabur, they're not going to bring aprons. No, please, take an apron. I said, okay, L'Shem Mitzvah Sholem Bayis. I'm going to take an apron. This is my Sholem Bayis apron. My wife starts handing him an apron with flowers all over it. I said, give me the other apron. Forget the one with the flowers. Just give me the plain black apron. I take the plain black apron, I go, and of course, I'm on the Sheirut with 4 other younger light, and they're none of them have aprons, just nice dark pants and white shirts, yeshiva light from the Mir Yeshiva, and we're going out to Beit Shemesh. We get to Beit Shemesh, and I remember for months we practiced on these tiny little chickens, the chickens that nobody was willing to eat, to buy. So those are the ones we practiced the Shechita on. We go to the Schlachthaus in Beit Shemesh. The biggest chickens we've ever seen. I never saw chickens this big. And meanwhile, we have our big knives and we're about to shecht. And these chickens, just to hold them down, they were twice the size of the little chickens we practiced on. And blood squirting all over the place. Mamish blood all over the place. These guys had blood. Mamish all over them. The blood got all over their shirts. Meanwhile, I had my Sholem Bayis apron on. That's it. I was nice and clean. Everything was gavaldik. My wife was matzah me. I had my Sholem Bayis apron with me. And Baruch Hashem, in the end of the day, we all passed. We get back on the Shirut. Now we get dropped off. I don't know if you know Yerushalayim HaKadosh, one of the busiest places in Yerushalayim on an Erev Shabbos is Shmuel HaNavi. By Yecheskel and Shmuel HaNavi Street, mamish, thousands of people there in a typical Erev Shabbos. And unfortunately, I don't know about nowadays with Corona in the air, but in the end of the day, one of the busiest places. And I get off Friday afternoon, I walk off the van. Now these guys have blood, and this was, by the way, in the middle of the second Intifada. And these guys have blood all over their shirts. Can you imagine? 8 on 5 with 4 other guys. And we walk off with big shechting knives. And I'm walking off, and I don't have a spot of blood on my shirt, and these guys have blood all over their shirts. Boy, did I get stares. Boy, did I get looks at Erev Shabbos. A lesson in life: never walk around with blood all over your shirts carrying big knives and your shalayim or anywhere in an Erev Shabbos Kodesh. Boy, did I get the stares. And I said, Gavaldik Sholem Bayis apron. But then I thought about it for a second. But look what they sacrificed. For Karen, maybe there's a tzad to say it's better to get bloody. Look what they gave up. The shechting, Teretz says, what? We don't care about the blood on our clothing. Don't care about the blood on our shirts. We're willing to get schwitzy and down dirty. For Kodesh Baruch Hashem says that's going to be Daichav Shabbos. Klal Yisrael is willing to schwitz and to give me their blood, sweat, and guts for Kedusha Shabbos. That matters to me more than the sanctity of Shabbos. I'm going to let the Kabbanis override my Shabbos Kodesh. That's what the Eibishter, that's what matters to him more than anything else in the world. Gevaldik, Shabbat Gevaldik. Now I want to be Messiah as follows. Comes out a very, very geschmack. Here we are in coronavirus season, this Tkufa Norah, that season that's taken over the entire world, that's hurting Klais on so many ways. And people are spending Shabbos not in shul, and they're learning during the day, and their homes, they're not in yeshivas, and they want to, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to serve you. I want to be an Eved Hashem. I want to be back in shul. I want to go out and have a Leibat Davening. I want to be with my Rav. I want to be with my Rabbeim. I want to be with my Chaverim. And we wonder, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to be an emes to Kevin Hashem. Klal Yisrael, realize this opportunity. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, we want to be in shul. We want to be back in yeshiva, back in kollel. Yes, we want to be sitting and learning and steiging Gavaldik. But Klal Yisrael, look at it from this perspective. Based on what we just explained, sometimes the most chaviv thing in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is when you're hurting and you're schwitzing and you're pouring and it's difficult and kids are screaming in the house and you can't get out and your mom is going to shtukam and you still open up the Gemara and you're still learning Daf Yomi. You're not in the Daf Yomi room. You're not sipping your cappuccino, your cup of coffee, and the Maggid Shir and the live Masav Avanta. You got to do it on Zoom in the computer. And we had Shurim yesterday on Zoom, and this broke down, and this wasn't working properly. And you got people talking in the background, and you have to do conference calls, and you don't have your Geshmak Chabura live, and you're not sitting with your Rabbeim, your Rabbonim, you don't have the Kiddush after davening. You're missing so much, and you say, HaKadosh, I want to give you Klal Yisrael. But how do you know that Hashem says, my beloved children, what's the most chaviv? When you're sacrificing, and it is difficult to daven, and you still go into a corner of the dining room, you still go into a corner of your house, and you still take out a sitter, and you have a nice hour and a half, 2 hour, 2.5 hour, 3 hour davening and Parshas HaChodesh, and you give it your all, and your mom is steiging, even in the midst of difficulty, even when you have that pachad that's in the air, that's in the ambiance, what's going to be, and you're still learning, and you're still davening, and you're still steiging. Klal Yisrael, that's Mebechinas the Kabbonis, that's sacrifice. When you don't have utopia, when you're not surrounded in your favorite shul, when you can't be in the white shul, and you can't have the Kiddush after davening, and you don't have your live Daf Yomi, you don't have your live Shurim, and Alpha Pekin, you're still learning, and you're still davening. Can you imagine how chaviv that is in the eyes of the Rebbeinu Shalom? That's what he loves. That sometimes is the most geschmack. So we'll close with Hillel's famous statement in Pirkei Avos Perek Beis Mishnah Daled. Hillel tells us, Al Timer L'Kshef Neshne Shemaloti Pone. Posha Pshat. Don't say, when I have free time, then I'm going to learn, because maybe you want to have free time, so you got to chaperein, seize the moment, Karbi Diem. And learn right now. No, Zoktav Simcha Bunami Pashischa. Gevaldik. Al Timer L'Kshef Neshne. Don't say when I have free time and I'm relaxed and everything is geschmack and it's sunny weather and there's no coronavirus and I got my favorite Rabbeim and Rabbonim and my favorite Shiurim and life is great and the Shalom Bayis and the kids and everything is mamish utopian like. Don't say, that's the learning that Hashem wants. Maybe the learning that Hashem wants is the Torah of Loti Pana, when you don't have free time, when you're not relaxed, and you're not in a Geshmak mood, and still you take out the Gemara, and still you take out the Sefer, and still you take out the Tanakh, and the Maral, and the Ramchal, and you take out the Hasidish Sfarim, and you take out the Kabbalah Sfarim, and you take out the Shas, and the Poskim, and you still get into the Sugya, even when you're at home, even when your life is not great, even when your IRAs and Roth IRAs and retirement accounts and the market's not doing well, and you're still learning and you're still steiging, even when it's difficult. So that's the most precious. Maybe that's what Hashem Yisbarach wants. The Chavetz Chaim, Rav Yerucham, in many, many places, based on Chazal. You know what? Sometimes one daf Gemara learned in pain and suffering with difficulty is even greater than 1,000 daf when life is great. So we're not all in sunny Geshmaka, San Diego-like weather, 75 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, no coronavirus, stock's doing great, and life is great, your business is being matzliach, shalom bayis, kids, everyone's out in the open, life is wonderful, and you're learning and you're steiging, it's beautiful, you get a lot of brownie points in Shemayim, and Hashem loves it. But Klal Yisrael, you know what Hashem loves even more? When you're in your homes and you got a coronavirus plaguing society, the world at large, and life is difficult, shalom bayis, this and the kids, and not getting out of the house and the business and retirement accounts, and still you're davening to me, and still you're learning, and still you're getting bloody and sweaty. Figuratively, you're giving Hashem your blood, sweat, and guts. That's the most chaviv thing to HaKadosh. You can't imagine how much Hashem loves you for the avodas hayom you're doing day in and day out. Never stop the davening, never stop the learning, keep steiging, because Shem aloti paneh. Maybe that's the Torah and the davening that Hashem really wants right now, and that's the most chaviv when you're giving Him your kabbonis, your own self-sacrifice. That's what Hashem loves, and He never stops loving you. Keep doing it, keep steiging. Gevaldik mechoyel. Have an awesome day.